Southeast Michigan farmers got a floating lesson on Great Lakes conservation. Will it be a trick or a treat for Michigan pumpkin growers this fall? And Michigan Agricultural Commodities Chris Betts has your market report. I'm Janelle Brose, and this is Farm News 5.
Farm News 5 is brought to you by Ford.
Pumpkin producers in Michigan are expecting an average crop after one of the wettest springs on record delayed planting. Much like other commodities across the state, pumpkin growers were delayed by continuous rains throughout May and June, leaving some producers planting anywhere from a week to 4 weeks later than normal.
We normally would plant pumpkins by Memorial Day, the 1st of June being perhaps the ideal day that we would want to do that. This year we could only think about it because it was way so wet. So we didn't get our first pumpkins in this year until the 15th of June, which was 2 weeks late, and we had a little lull in the seemingly daily rains that we were receiving for a few days there, and we were able to kind of, as I've used the term, we mudded some in like some other farm operators did as well. However, the rains had not stopped yet by that point, and so for the next couple of, I think the next 10 days, we had some areas that flooded repeatedly. So we were trying to get those areas planted as quickly as we could, but it was simply too wet. We finally got them planted the 29th of June, so we're now basically a month late. One of the difficulties that we had this year, we had so much rain in May and June, which delayed planting. We get to July and August, and the rain faucet was turned off, and we simply had very little rain here in July and August. We have an irrigation system. We were able to irrigate this block behind us a couple of times, and it responded. But again, the bottom line for all of this is that we'll have pumpkins, but we won't have the size. I think in surveying what we have in the field at this point, we'll probably max out at $5 or $6. So if you look at losing perhaps $4 a pumpkin for maybe 1,000 pumpkins, that has some impact on the bottom line.
It was a tale of 2 Augusts, really. In Mason, where Tannenbaum Farms is located, the month of August was dry. But in Ottawa Lake, home to Gust Brothers Pumpkin Farm, it wasn't.
With the pumpkin crop, August rain is very key. Pumpkins really generally like dry feet, we say, and they need just some timely rains in August. This year we did, down here in the southeast part of Lenawee County, we did have some timely rains. Unfortunately, some of them were too big, and we had a 3-inch rain event and then an 1.5 inch and another 2-inch rain event. So we've been almost a little bit too wet for our cucurbit and pumpkin crop late here in the season. When pumpkins sit in the damp conditions, you run the risk of some quality issues. Doesn't necessarily hurt your tonnage or your quantity, but quality comes into play. So a lot of times you'll have some bad stems because of it, possibly some spots on the pumpkins, that soft spots that create a product that you can't sell. So that's one of the concerns when you get a wet, damp August into early September. We're hoping that's not the case, but above all, we're not going to complain too much. We think it's going to be a pretty average crop.
If you want a car from a company that's been building them for 115 years, get a Ford. If you want a car with driver assist technology, get a Ford. You're gonna want a Ford.
In recent years, the 10,000 square mile Lake Erie has experienced algal blooms that form as a result of phosphorus runoff. Southeast Michigan farmers recently spent a day on the water learning how to further protect, preserve, and enhance water quality in the Great Lakes. Too much phosphorus and the lake's very shallow depth and warm water make the western basin of Lake Erie even more prone to harmful algal blooms.
So when we talk about algae blooms and water quality issues within the western Lake Erie Basin, we're looking at a very complex problem that has numerous different sources that are contributors. In the past few decades, we've done a lot of work with some of the point source contributions, things like wastewater treatment plants, that are permitted on the amount of phosphorus that they're allowed as an effluent, as a pollution source. Now we're kind of looking at some of the non-point source contributions like fertilizer and agriculture and failing septic systems.
Rob Mazarin joined the boat tour along with his daughters Cassidy and Sydney. The Mazarins own and operate a 500-acre corn, wheat, and soybean operation in Newport, Michigan.
This epidemic with this algae bloom is becoming quite a crisis here in the last several years. And I had some other friends that had went on this tour last year, and they told me it was a well worth trip to understand the magnitude of it. We see it on the news, we seen some aerial photos of it, but wanted to realize it firsthand. Also wanted to have my daughters experience it so that we can continue to do measures to prevent this and to help it recede over the next generation.
Rob wants the public to know that farmers are doing their part to be a part of the solution and not the problem.
For one thing is there's several water intakes. So first of all, we have to, the health and safety of our residents and our families, our communities, that's number one priority. We want to make sure that we have safe, good drinking water for future generations. And for us as farmers, we've started implementing filter strips and watching our phosphorus and nitrogen inputs into our fields, and incorporating fertilizers and getting them deep within the soil so that we can prevent the runoff and this algae bloom that these fertilizers are stimulating.
So MEEP is it's a statewide program through Michigan Department of Ag. The really short version, it's an environmental certification program or verification program.
Made possible by the Herb Family Foundation, the day-long event included presentations by the Monroe Conservation District, the River Raisin Institute, and the Michigan Agriculture Environmental Assurance Program.
MEEP, it looks at farming through the environmental lens, and we're looking at how some of our practices can impact what's going on in our Great Lakes, especially our water quality, but also some of our air quality and other natural resources. And that's where it's geared towards. So the standards are, we're looking at things like nutrient management, pesticide management out in the farm field, some risk management on the farmstead as well, preventing things, like agricultural spills, making sure there's containment if those things happen, groundwater pollution, all those things. It used to be the groundwater stewardship program, so, that kind of says where it's got its roots, and it's really focused on what we're talking about out here.
Do you understand how the new GAMPs apply to you? Compliance with the GAMP is critical to benefiting from the protections of the Michigan Right to Farm Act. Learn more at fosterswift.com.
Germany has approved a plan to ban the use of glyphosate, the key ingredient in Roundup, by 2023. Bayer, the maker of Roundup, is headquartered in Germany. The country will first restrict the use of glyphosate before completely phasing it out by the end of 2023. Germany's decision follows a move by Austria, which announced a glyphosate ban over the summer. And now with a look at the latest market activity, here is Michigan Ag Commodities' Chris Betts.
Thanks, Janelle. A subdued mood for grains continued this week. Corn has been the worst for wear, pressured by additional fund selling as forecasts remain largely non-threatening over the next couple weeks. Additional moisture and a low risk for frost will benefit late developing crops. Wheat has been weighed by the lower trend in corn, as well as expectations for increased export competition abroad. Both corn and wheat are trying to find some footing, but remain near contract lows. Outside markets were firm off an announcement that Chinese and U.S. trade officials have scheduled a face-to-face meeting in October. Soybeans, however, have struggled to gain support with expectations for big South American crops, as well as China securing cargoes from sources outside the U.S. amidst the ongoing trade war. For more market information, go to michag.com. With Michigan Agricultural Commodities, I'm Chris Betts.
For more news and video, visit MichiganFarmNews.com and the Michigan Farm Bureau channel on YouTube. With Farm News 5, I'm Janelle Brose. Have a great week of farming.